Welcome back, Internet, to another edition of Eric's Corner with the Word of the Not So Wise. Today I'm going to touch on fuel-saving gimmicks. Back in 2007, both Chevy and Dodge came out with a electrical system that they called, Chevy called it active fuel management, or I'm sorry, General Motors called it active fuel management, and Dodge or Daimler Chrysler called it displacement on demand. I'm positive that's what they called it, but I looked it up and it was called MDS, multiple displacement system, which is weird because I was selling cars back then and I don't know how that got past me. I think Dodge came out with it in '06. Basically, they shut half the cylinders off to save fuel, and they said, well, a 350, 400 horse engine doesn't need 400 horse once it gets moving. No, they don't. That's what a transmission is for. And these engines at their peak horsepower is around 4,800 RPMs. Let's just say that's not a fact. That's not what they all are. I'm just saying that's around. Any of your engines, once you rev them up, they're going to peak out at around 5,000 RPMs. So they say, once you get up to highway speed and you've used that, your instant throttle response to get you up to highway speeds quickly, you don't need all that horsepower. It's like, well, yeah, because you have a transmission that shifts gears and you're only turning 2,000-ish RPMs. My 06 Silverado that had the Vortec Max, the high output 6-liter in it. Loved that truck, fully loaded, and I drove that thing for 10 years. That was my baby. But it didn't have this system on it, but the next generation did. The same engine, but they would shut half the engine off. And people would argue like, oh, well, I mean, the system works great. And they tell me, well, you're not an engineer. You didn't build the engines. No, I didn't. But I know a little bit about marketing. Again, I sold cars for 6 months. I mean, and I was supposed to promote this vehicle. Well, active fuel management with the GM product, I mean, it says right on your dashboard when the cylinders kick in and out. And they basically, I sat there and watched it as I was cruising down the highway, and it would say, V8 or V4. It would say 4.8, 4.8, 4.8. I mean, it'd kick into 4-cylinder mode for like 2 seconds. And then when you're sitting at a traffic light, it would stay on V8 mode, where you would think it would kick on 4-cylinder mode. And the guy from, God damn it, not the Action Lab, Engineering Explained, who great channel. That guy, he could explain engineering to a chipmunk. I swear to God, he is smart. Take everything he says as gospel. I recently watched a video where he was talking about how it shuts the engine off at red lights and so forth. And I said it's too hard on equipment, too hard on the starter. And he said, well, they built the starter to take this abuse. Why don't you just always build a starter like that to begin with then? So it's kind of a tipping point between marketing and actual reality. So anyway, backing up. Let's take a 4-cylinder engine and let's put it into a pickup. It's only 4 cylinders. Once you get it up to highway speed, let's say we're on a racetrack, a NASCAR racetrack. Once you get up to highway speed, okay, cool. It still takes a lot of RPMs to maintain the power it takes to overcome the wind resistance, the roll resistance of your tires, everything else. I mean, it's just a logical fallacy if you ask me. I mean, again, I've talked in other videos about believing the science. Like, well, basic observation says this is wrong. So let's say you have a 6-liter engine, and we'll chop it down to a 3.5 liter, or I'm sorry, a 3-liter engine. You say, okay, well, it runs twice the RPMs to maintain that horsepower to run around that track after you've gotten up to your highway speed. Okay, well, the fuel to air ratio goes up at higher RPMs. So you're not really saving anything. And like I said, I drove these vehicles and they don't stay on 4-cylinder mode. It kicks in and out almost immediately. So my first argument for this not working, basically, Ford never built one. Neither did Toyota. I mean, kind of a big red flag there, right? And General Motors nor Dodge, to my knowledge, ever really had a problem with this making their engines not last any longer. Uh, they quit making them. So that's argument number two. They quit making them without a failing engine that it was equipped with this system. Ford, who makes a shitload of engines, I mean, all the RVs, the cherry pickers, the fire trucks, not the big fire engines, but your fire trucks, um, they make almost all of them. I'm not saying all of them, almost all of them. They have a major production and contracts. Your police cars, your all these things are almost all Fords. I didn't even see any that Dodge built until recently, and it's just this one truck that probably cost 3 times the amount because the owner wanted a Cummins, which I get. Um, so they discontinued them without a faulting the engine. Two other big manufacturers did not build them, so it must not work, correct? So I called it from day one. I mean, when you take half your engine and again, you go into your overdrive gear and you're only turning 2,000 RPMs, you're not producing 400 horsepower. You're producing like 150. You shut off half your cylinders. Now you're only producing 80 horsepower and you're pushing a dead weight of half the engine. You're only producing 30 horsepower. I mean, I'm sorry, but you know, Husqvarna or John Deere lawnmower produces 30 horsepower, and you think that's going to push a 6,000-pound truck at 70 miles an hour? It just simply is not there. These things do not add up. The numbers don't lie. I mean, again, I'll ask the dude from Engineering Explained, which I've invited him onto my show a few times via the internet, but I mean, other people probably do too. So, um, yeah, that's my take on marketing doing a better job of selling you bullshit than something that's actually going to work. Again, I talked to an electrician at work and he's like, well, I mean, you know, we got to work some bugs out, which I agree. But we've been doing it for 15 goddamn years, 20 years. And he even mentioned the first cars were electric. I mean, son of a bitch. I mean, we've been in this way too long to not have these bugs worked out. I talked before about build a generator into the car. And he said, well, that's what the engine is. No. I mean, just a generator, not a big horsepower V8 engine that's attached to an electric motor that can or cannot take it, or a generator, or whatever. I mean, there's a difference between a gimmick and something that works. I'm not saying I'm completely right. I just told you about how I know in my mind that it's wrong. They don't build it anymore. Other manufacturers don't do it. You know, there's got to be something to that. We can do better. We will improve, and that's okay. I mean, there's going to be some growing pains, and we will figure out what works. I actually have an invention that I'm hoping to make some money with my channel to patent it. I actually came across a little extra cash that I'm gonna submit I got the money to submit my invention to another to a company to hopefully get it going. I'm supposed to talk to them tomorrow. Actually, it's the 23rd of November. Um, and we'll see what happens there. So, yeah, if you like my channel, stay tuned. Other than that, keep your stick on the ice. So, thank you for joining me. Have a good night.